The fixture has been confirmed, and we're being honest, it should be an absolute thriller to watch. There's a lot on the line for both the fighters, with this being Nate Diaz's final fight, and it offers Khamzat Chimeav the chance to establish himself with a win over one of the big names in the UFC. But what can we expect from the fight? Let's find out. First up, an easy win for Khamzat. Now, we know that it's not easy to pick a winner at this level, but we're not sure if there's ever been such a terribly one-sided matchup, at least in the build-up of the fight. Khamzat is unbeaten in his UFC career so far, while Nate Diaz has won one fight in the last 6 years. So you see why we think Khamzat is winning, right? However, you can't rule out Nate Diaz completely. He's a legend in the UFC, and while his recent record might not be that pretty, we know Diaz had a tremendous peak, and he was a household name in the promotion for many years. Along with that, it's the last fight of Diaz's UFC contract, and he's landed a big one in Khamzat. He knows everyone will be betting against him, so he'd love to prove the UFC fandom wrong one more time. But all that said and done, the UFC isn't particularly fond of nostalgia and legendary statuses. We've seen some huge upsets and peaks getting destroyed, and the status quo isn't usually changed by fighters ending their careers. Khamzat's an up-and-coming star. He's not going to hang around on any kind of nostalgia or emotion. He's one to get to business right away, and we wouldn't be surprised if the end of Nate's career is an anticlimactic one. Secondly, a nonsensical matchup. Veteran fans of the UFC will tell you that Dana White's got what he wanted with the Khamzat-Diaz fight. It's obvious that the promoter is using Khamzat to do his bidding for the UFC, and that's probably not what the Chechen monster had in mind when he set out on his ambitious journey. Matthew Wells is calling this fixture a nonsensical matchup, and we're very much in agreement with his opinion. Diaz does have a lot of drawing power, and there's no doubt a lot of eyes will be watching UFC 279 with much interest, but it's a fight that makes no sense. In fact, if you think about it, the fight seems like a detour for Khamzat. It's like he's busy doing side missions in GTA rather than focusing on his big goal of landing a title fight. And once you get wasted in the UFC, it's not like the GTA. You won't be coming back up again anytime soon. So, more or less, this fight is a huge risk for a fighter like Khamzat. He's got nothing to gain from it because everyone expects him to win, but at the same time, he's got everything to lose should he stumble. Yeah, if the fight had happened 1 year ago, we'd have been on board because Khamzat was still a rising star, but now he's in the orbit, and if anything, it's a far lesser challenge than his fight against Gilbert Burns. But what exactly happens if, somehow by some stroke of luck, Diaz does win it? Oh, the mayhem. That kind of chaos would be incredible to see as the American walks away after dispatching off UFC's brightest talent. And look out for Khamzat's strengths. Khamzat's known for his exceptional striking, his gifted athletic ability, which is second to none in the UFC, and of course, his superb wrestling skills. That should be a huge challenge for Nate Diaz, who has a unique skill set too, but he's not a spring chicken anymore, and coming up against the likes of a younger beast in Khamzat isn't exactly what he'd be hoping for in the final fight of the UFC career. Keep an eye out for how well Khamzat copes with Nate's devastating body combinations and whether he's got it in him to keep the American at bay. Nate's the type of wrestler who keeps wearing his opponents down through his efficient striking that can be a unique weapon in his arsenal. But Chimaev knows exactly how to defend against good striking, and he knows when to strike an edge ahead. This would have been one of the best fights in the UFC if Nate had been at his peak. They match up well, but Chimaev's strengths will be a little too much for Diaz to handle. At this point in his career, especially because of his size and strength, and the way he can just dominate and overpower his competition. Lastly, a decent crowd. It might not be the best fight of the year, but we can say with a lot of confidence that it'll definitely be pulling a huge crowd. As we mentioned before, Nate Diaz can pull a crowd, and after the kind of career he's had, even if you include the last few years, the Stockton Slugger knows how to get the crowd going, and he might have slowed down in the fighting department, but his promotion skills are still pretty decent. We're expecting a lot of viewership and a fantastic crowd in the UFC 279 because this will be the final time, most probably, that we see Diaz in action, and it's important to witness a milestone as big as this. At the same time, the crowd desperately wants to see some more of the Chechen superstar Khamzat, and he's only had one fight, again an absolute thriller, and the crowd wants more and more of the deceptively quick and super strong fighter. That's the big reason behind Dana White's insistence on creating this fixture, and if we're being honest, we can't wait for it. Most of the people here with us have a lot of respect for what Diaz has achieved throughout his career, and we'd love to see him go out with a bang. Now, in other news, starting with UFC 279's fight card. Even though the UFC 279 will be headlined by the Nate Diaz vs. Khamzat Chimaev clash, there are still some other superb fights to look forward to. Jailton Almeida is set to return to action in the heavyweight division, and he'll be taking on the challenge from Russian Shamil Abdurakhimov. It might not be the biggest fight on the night, but it could end up being a much better matched fixture, and we could see some entertaining swipes in that one. As for the pay-per-view event, it's set to feature 3 fights fights that have already been penciled in. We'll be starting with Norma Dumont taking on Danielle Wolfe, followed by another featherweight division fight between Macy Chiasson and Irene Aldana. Both of them won their previous fights and will be hoping to extend their winning streak. The final clash will be between an undefeated prospect, Melissa Martinez, who is 7-0, and will make her UFC debut against Elise Reed. We've already had some cancellations for the UFC 279, which included potential fights between Oliveira Makhachev and TJ Dillashaw Aljamain Sterling. Next up, Khamzat to take over UFC funeral duties. Allow us to explain. It's just trash talk. Nobody's dying. Well, at least we hope not. Talking about his upcoming massive fight, Khamzat explained how he'll be handling the UFC funeral for Nate Diaz in their UFC 279 clash. Safe to say, Borz is quite confident about his fight, and he's got every reason to be confident. So far in his young career, he's managed to dispatch every and any challenge in the octagon. And even though Nate Diaz is the biggest name he'll be facing, there's a reason he's fighting his final bout in the UFC. It'll be interesting to see if Chimaev doing Dana's dirty work by giving a brutal farewell to Diaz helps him land a title shot, because this certainly doesn't feel like a fixture that would help him in his bid to land a championship fight. Then again, weirder things have happened in the UFC, but for now, Khamzat is too busy preparing himself for what he calls a UFC funeral for Nate Diaz. Lastly, UFC professionals react to Khamzat-Diaz clash. As soon as the Khamzat-Diaz clash was announced, some professionals took to Twitter to give their 2 cents on the upcoming blockbuster fight. Ben Askren, a former MMA, mirrored our thoughts as he pointed out that this might be really ugly. Askren knows that it's a mismatch of sorts, with Khamzat having a much bigger edge, and it's almost unfair to give Diaz a send-off like this, although he's the one who asked for it. Jake Paul, like always, had the most different opinion and revealed how he'd be putting his money on Diaz rather than fake Khabib. Belal Muhammad, on the other hand, wants Diaz and Leon Edwards to win because that would ruin everyone's predictions and plans. Randy Costa could only explain his thoughts through an emoji, and it seemed as if he couldn't believe that the fight had been confirmed. And Darren Till seemed to be quite made up as he said, "What a fight," quoting the confirmation of the bout from Brett Okamoto. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think it'll be an easy win for Khamzat, or will Nate Diaz shock the UFC world one last time? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.